Hello and welcome back to Grave Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales whispered straight from the grave, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. I didn't want to write this, not because I'm afraid of how it sounds, but because I think it proves something I've been trying very hard not to accept. I am not the only one. After my last post, someone messaged me. There was no introduction, no hey, no are you okay, no sign they were trying to be polite, just a single line asking if I had been in the flood. At first I ignored it. I thought it was some random person trying to mess with me. But then they sent another message. They asked if I still felt hungry even after eating. That made me stop. I stared at the screen for a long time before I answered. Because that was the first thing they said that felt too close, too specific, too personal. I had not told anyone about that part, not even the few people I trusted. So I replied. We did not talk like normal people after that. It felt more like we were comparing notes from the same nightmare. They told me they had memory gaps too, that they would wake up exhausted, even after sleeping for hours. That something inside them felt wrong, like their body was still theirs, but not quite living the way it should. Then they said something that made my stomach turn. They could not eat normal food anymore, especially cooked food. That hit me hard because I had been dealing with the same thing. I had been trying to explain it away for days. I thought maybe I was stressed. Maybe I was getting sick. Maybe I just had a weird reaction to everything after what happened. But cooked food now made me feel sick in a way I could not describe. Even the smell of it sometimes made my stomach tighten. I never told anyone that part. Not in my post. Not to friends, not to a doctor. And here was this stranger, saying it like they already knew. After a little while, they asked if I heard knocking sometimes. I asked them what kind of knocking. They sent the pattern exactly like this. Tap, 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 tap. I did not answer right away. I just sat there and looked at it. That knock had already made its way into my mind enough times that seeing it written out like that made my skin go cold. Then they said they thought something was following them. They asked if we could meet. I knew I should have said no. Every part of me knew that. Meeting a stranger in a place connected to whatever this was felt like the kind of choice that ends badly. But I went anyway. I told myself I needed answers, that this was the only way to find out if I was losing my mind or if something real was happening. We met near the area where the flood happened. That part was not planned. It just ended up being the place we both chose. Maybe because it felt important, or maybe because neither of us could think about anywhere else. The ground was still dry in most places, but the smell had not gone away. It felt like the water had left, but not really, like the place still remembered it. When I got there, they were already standing in the distance with their back to me. For a second, I just watched them. They looked normal from behind. Same posture, same shoulders, same height, maybe. I remember my chest tightening. Not from fear exactly, but from something much stranger, recognition. They turned around slowly, and the first thing I felt was not shock. It was recognition again, deeper this time. They looked like me. Not exactly me. Not in a mirror way, but close enough that my brain immediately wanted to call it me. Same tired eyes, same thin face, same kind of empty look behind the eyes that I had started seeing in my own reflection. We did not say hello. The first thing they asked was if it had started yet. I knew exactly what they meant. I told them it came and went, that it got worse at night, that sometimes I felt like I was about to lose control of my body or my thoughts, like I was standing too close to the edge of something I could not see. They nodded like none of it surprised them. Then they said something I have not been able to stop thinking about. They said, "It does not stop." I asked what they meant, but they did not answer right away. Instead, they looked past me into the dark behind my shoulder. "Can you hear it?" they asked. I listened. At first, I could not hear anything, just the normal sounds of the place. A little wind, distant traffic, the faint shift of dry grass. Then I heard it. Tap, 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 tap. Not from a door, not from a wall, not from anything that should have made that sound. It came from somewhere out in the dark, as if the knocking was just floating there in the air. We both turned at the same time. Nothing was there. When I looked back at them, they were smiling. That was when the whole thing stopped feeling normal. It was not a real smile. It was too wide and too calm, like they were forcing it to stay in place. They said, "See? It comes for us." I did not like the way they said us. Something changed in their face after that. Not physically, not right away. It was the eyes. That same empty look I had started to see in myself, only worse in them. Like there was nothing behind the eyes at all. Like the person I was speaking to had started slipping away while we stood there. They told me they had tried to stop, that they had stayed inside, stayed away from people, tried to do everything right. But then they stepped closer and said something else. They said one night they did not stop. I took a step back before I even realized I was moving. I did not need them to explain. I understood the feeling they meant. That feeling I had in the flood, the one that came over me like calm, like relief, like everything had gone quiet for a second and become almost peaceful. I had tried to ignore it. Apparently they had not. That was when I noticed the smell. It was not rot exactly, not decay. It was fresher than that, but wrong in another way. Damp, sharp, and too alive for a place that should have been empty. I looked at their hands and saw dark grime under the fingernails. The same kind I had seen on mine. The knocking came again. Tap, 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 tap. This time it sounded closer. Their face changed in an instant. The smile disappeared, and for the first time they looked scared. Not of me, of something behind me. They took another step back and said, "Not now." I turned around fast, nothing. Just the empty place behind me, the dried ground, the edges of the flood line, the quiet dark around us. When I looked back, they were already backing away too. "Wait," I said. "What are you talking about?" But they were shaking their head like they did not want to answer. Then they said, "Don't let it stop you." I did not understand that at first. Then, almost angry, they said, "Next time you won't want it to." And then they ran. I did not follow. I could not. My feet felt stuck to the ground like the whole place had wrapped around my legs, and told me to stay put. I was staring after them when I realized something I had been trying very hard not to notice. The feeling in the flood, the one I thought was just relief, had not been relief at all. It had been me. Whatever that thing was, whatever it was that knocks, it had not been hunting us the way I first thought. It had been stopping us, stopping whatever we were becoming. That was the thought that has not left me since. I keep turning it over in my head, and every time I do, it gets worse. Because if that thing is not chasing us, then what is it doing? What is it stopping us from becoming? And what happens if it stops trying? I keep thinking about my reflection now, about the exhaustion, about the hunger, about the way cooked food makes my stomach turn, about the empty moments where I cannot remember what I was doing or where I was going, about the knocking, always the knocking. After I got home, I checked every message from that stranger again and again. I wanted to see if I had missed something, some clue, some warning. But there was nothing else. Just the same simple messages, each one making less and less sense the longer I stared at them. I tried to sleep that night, but every time I started drifting off, I thought I heard it again. Tap, 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 tap. Not outside, not at the door, just somewhere near me, close enough to feel. I did not get up to check. I did not look. I stayed in bed and listened until the sound went away or until my brain convinced me it had. The next day, I looked in the mirror for longer than I wanted to. My face looked the same, but only barely. Tired eyes, thin cheeks, skin that seemed a little too pale in the wrong light. I stood there trying to convince myself that nothing was different, but I could not shake the feeling that something behind my eyes was watching me back. I tried to eat lunch. I could not finish it. The smell was wrong. The taste was wrong. Even before I swallowed, my stomach had already started turning. I threw it away and sat down, feeling more tired than I should have. That evening, I got another message from the stranger. It just said, "Do not let it hear you when you answer." I stared at that line for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Hear what?" They did not respond for several minutes. When they finally did, the answer was only one line. "You already know." That was when I realized I did. Or maybe a better way to say it is that I had always known, and I had been avoiding the truth because I did not want to say it out loud. The knocking's not just a sound. It is a warning, or maybe a command, maybe both. I do not know what it is stopping us from becoming, but I know now that every time I ignored that feeling in the flood, something moved closer. Every time I thought I was fine, every time I told myself I was just tired, something was waiting for me to let my guard down. And the person I met by the flood, the one who looked like me, they knew it too. Maybe they already crossed the line I have not crossed yet. Maybe that is why they smiled the way they did. Maybe that is why they ran. I have not told anyone else about this. I do not know who I can trust anymore. I do not know whether that person was trying to help me or warn me or pass something off before it got worse. I do not know if I'm already too late. But I know this much. The hunger is not normal. The memory gaps are not normal. The knock is not normal. And whatever I saw in the flood, whatever I saw in that person who looked like me, it was not an accident. It was a warning or a promise. I do not know how many times that thing can stop us, but I think I am starting to understand why it has to. Story 2. I moved into a small studio apartment on the 4th floor because it was cheap. Honestly, it was too cheap. That should have been my first warning. But at the time, I was just happy to have found a place I could actually afford. The landlord told me the last tenant had left in a hurry. He said the man had abandoned most of his things and never came back for him. I remember thinking that was strange, but not strange enough to make me walk away. The apartment itself was plain and a little worn down. The carpet looked old. The paint had gone slightly yellow in places, and the bathroom sink dripped unless you turned the handle just right. Still, it was mine, and I was trying to make it feel like home. I spent the first day cleaning out what the previous tenant had left behind. There were boxes of trash, a broken lamp, a pair of shoes, some old books, and a few things that felt too personal to throw away too quickly. The whole place had that stale smell old apartments get when no one has lived in them properly for a while. While I was cleaning the closet, I noticed that one of the baseboards was loose. It didn't sit flush against the wall like the others. I crouched down and tugged at it a little, expecting dust or maybe a loose pipe behind it. Instead, a folded piece of paper slipped out from the gap. It was a map. Not a map of the apartment, not really. It was hand-drawn, rough and uneven, with the lines and arrows marked between the studs inside the walls. It showed little pathways, turns, and spaces I could not understand at first. Near the bathroom side of the apartment, one section was circled hard enough that the pencil had almost torn through the paper. Under that circle, in blocky handwriting, were the words, "Here, cut the drywall. Be quiet. It listens." I stood there holding the paper for a long time. I told myself it was some kind of joke. Maybe a weird note from the old tenant. Maybe something he made during a breakdown. Maybe a prank. But the longer I looked at it, the less funny it felt. The words were too direct, too serious. They were written like instructions from someone who had learned something the hard way. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I folded it up and put it on the bathroom counter while I finished unpacking. I kept glancing at it as the evening got darker outside. I tried not to think about it, but the phrase kept repeating in my head. Be quiet. It listens. That night, I made a stupid choice. I got a small utility knife and went into the bathroom. I stood in front of the sink, staring at the spot the map had marked. My hand was shaking a little, but curiosity was stronger than good sense. I cut a small square into the drywall where the paper had said. The blade slid through easier than I expected. The plaster came away in one clean piece, and I set it on the bathroom floor. I expected to see insulation, maybe pipes, maybe wires. What I saw instead made my stomach tighten. There was a hallway behind the wall. It was narrow, dark, and wooden, with a floor that looked old but intact. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings, all of them from the same year, 1987. The papers were brittle and yellowed, pasted or nailed or somehow stuck to the wood in layers. I could not read all of the headlines from where I was standing, but I could tell they were all old. They made the space feel trapped in time. I stood there for a second, unable to move. Then I stepped through. The hallway was cramped enough that my shoulders almost brushed both sides at once. It turned left, then right, then opened into a room that looked eerily similar to my studio. Same size, same basic shape, same window placement. Only the window was bricked over. In the center of the room stood a wooden chair. On the chair was a journal. I picked it up with both hands. The handwriting on the first page was the same as the handwriting on the map. Day 1. I heard scratching. I thought it was mice. Then I found the hole in my closet wall. I made it bigger. I found this room. It has no door to the hallway. The only way in is through my bathroom wall. I do not know who built it. I sat down slowly, still holding the notebook. The next page made my mouth go dry. Day 14. I started sleeping here. The air is stale, but I feel safe. The scratching is louder in my apartment. It is quieter here. I think the room was made to hide from something. I turned another page. Day 30. I saw it in my apartment through the peephole I drilled. A figure, tall, no face. It stood in my kitchen. It did not move. It just stood there waiting. I stayed in the hidden room for 3 days. When I came out, the figure was gone. But my fridge was open. All the food was gone. The figure ate it. I stopped reading for a second and looked around the room again. The chair, the bricked window, the clippings. The way the space was too small to feel comfortable, but too complete to be accidental. It looked like someone had lived here, hidden away from the rest of the apartment for a long time. I kept going. Day 47. I hear breathing now. Not from my apartment. From the wall behind this room. There is a second hidden space. I have not opened it. I'm afraid of what is inside. That was the last entry. The page after it had been torn out. I stared at that empty edge for a while, then looked toward the far wall. There was a crack in the wood there, so small I almost missed it. Just a thin line of darkness. I set the journal down and moved closer. Every instinct I had told me not to do it, but I could not stop myself. I put my eye against the crack and looked through. At first I saw only blackness. Then I saw movement, a shape. It was hard to make out in the dark, but it was there, and it was breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The kind of breathing that sounds too big to belong to one person. I froze so long my knees started to ache. Then I ran. I stumbled back through the hallway, nearly scraping my shoulders against the walls. I cut myself on one of the jagged edges where the drywall had been removed. I did not care. I just wanted out. I forced my way back into my bathroom, shoved the drywall square back in place, and taped over it, as best I could with what little tape I had in the drawer. Then I put the baseboard back in the closet and tried to make everything look normal again. For 3 weeks, I did not go back. I did not make new holes. I did not cut the drywall again. I tried to pretend that I had never seen the hidden room, that I had imagined the hallway, that I had made the whole thing up from stress or exhaustion or too many horror stories online. I told myself all of that while I slept with the light on more often than I should have. But then the breathing started. At first it was faint. I would be lying in bed and hear a soft, slow sound from somewhere in the apartment. I thought it was the pipes. Then I thought maybe it was the neighbors through the wall. But the sound was too close and too steady. It did not sound like a normal building settling. It sounded like something breathing in and out on the other side of the room. The worst part was that it seemed to come from my closet. The same closet where I had found the map. I opened it once and shined my phone light inside, but there was nothing there except my shoes. a vacuum cleaner, and some clothes. The back wall looked normal. I closed the door and told myself I was being paranoid. That did not help. Last night, the breathing got louder. I opened the closet again, and this time, the back wall was gone. In its place was the same dark hallway I had found before, the same wooden floor, the same newspaper clippings on the walls. It looked exactly the same as the hidden space behind the bathroom wall. At the end of the hallway, in the same room as before, sat the wooden chair. It was empty. The journal was on the floor this time, open. I picked it up with shaking hands and found a fresh entry, written in the same handwriting. Day 48. He found my map. He cut the wall. He saw me. Now I am in his closet. I am waiting. I am breathing. Soon he will come back to the hidden room, and he will bring food. I dropped the journal. I backed out of the hallway and slammed the closet door shut. I do not know how I did it, but I got a hammer and nails and sealed it as best I could. I nailed the door shut, then dragged a heavy dresser in front of it. I told myself that would be enough. It was not. Now I am writing this from inside the bathroom. It is the only room in the apartment that has a lock, so that is where I went. I shut the door, locked it, and pushed a laundry basket against it for good measure. I have been in here for 3 hours, maybe longer. Time feels strange now. I keep listening to the walls. The breathing is louder. At first I thought it was still coming from the closet. Then I thought it had moved to the hallway. Now I know it is coming from the wall behind me. The same wall I cut open weeks ago. The same wall I patched. The breathing is inside it now. I can hear it right next to my ear when I lean forward. That is the worst part. It feels close enough to touch. Every now and then I hear a tiny scrape, like something moving on the other side of the drywall. Once, I thought I heard fingernails dragging across wood. Another time, I heard a soft knock from inside the wall, like something was trying to get my attention without making too much noise. I have not opened the bathroom door since I locked it. I am afraid of what I will see if I do. The apartment feels smaller now. The air in here is warm and stale. My phone battery is almost dead. I keep checking the time even though I do not want to know. Every sound makes me jump. I keep thinking about the journal, about that last line about the way the hidden tenant said he would bring food. I understand what he means now. He is waiting for me to go back into the hidden room. He is waiting for me to open the wall again. He is waiting for me to do exactly what the map told me not to do in the first place. The breathing changed a minute ago. It stopped being slow and steady. Now it is faster, like something is excited. If you ever find a map inside your walls, do not follow it. Do not cut the drywall. Do not read the journal. Do not even touch the paper if you can help it. And if you hear breathing in your apartment, leave. Do not look for the source. Do not stay to see what is behind the wall. Burn the building if you have to. Move to another city. Start over somewhere else. Just do not do what I did. I cannot leave now. The bathroom door is locked, but the breathing is right on the other side of the wall, and I can hear something else with it now. A scratch. Slow at first, then another. It sounds like something is trying to open the wall from the inside. Story 3. We knew the house was haunted the second we moved in. I mean that in the most literal way possible. We had our bags in our hands. We were walking up the front path, and from inside the house we heard faint screaming. It was not loud enough to sound like someone was being killed, but it was loud enough to make all of us stop at once and look at one another. The sound came from somewhere deep in the house, thin and broken, like it was moving through walls. It lasted only a few seconds. Then it stopped. So naturally, we let ourselves inside and searched every room. There was nothing. No one. No sign that anybody had been there at all. The house was empty, at least in the normal sense. No open windows, no broken locks, no footprints, no blood. Nothing that explained the screaming we had all heard only a minute earlier. And by then the screaming was gone, which made it easy enough to pretend we had imagined it. That would have been the end of it if Dan had not recorded the sound. He had his phone out already, because Dan recorded everything. He had hit record when we were still outside, mostly because he liked to document things, and partly because he was the kind of person who thought a recording would prove he was not losing his mind if anything strange happened. It did prove that much. The sound was there on the recording, clear enough that none of us could talk ourselves out of it. It was coming from inside the house. That was the first real proof we had. The house itself was a single-family home on the edge of town, right where the city gave way to the mountains. After that, everything spread out into gated neighborhoods and big private roads and houses that looked identical from the street, like a row of neat little prison cells with good lawns, the kind of place where you only hear other people if you are close enough to their windows to catch the sound of them fighting. It was quiet there most of the time. Too quiet, maybe. The kind of quiet that makes small sounds feel larger than they are. At first, we tried to ignore the screaming. We told ourselves there had to be some reasonable explanation. Maybe a radio had been left on before the house was empty. Maybe the noise had carried from somewhere else. Maybe the mountains made sound bend in strange ways. We said these things because that is what people do when they do not want to believe their own fear. But the house did not let us keep pretending for long. Things began to move. At first, it was the kind of thing that could still be explained away if you worked hard enough at it. A milk carton not where Lisa had left it. Dan going to the bathroom and coming back to find his toothbrush missing. Beth asking if any of us had touched her guitar picks, because the little tin she kept them in was suddenly empty. We checked drawers and counters and couch cushions. We checked bags, pockets, the sink, the trash, the laundry room, all the usual places where small objects disappear when people are careless. Nothing made sense. Obviously, I did not believe in any of it at first. I was the skeptic. I was the one who kept saying things like, "It's a draft," or "You probably moved it yourself and forgot," or "Come on, guitar picks? Really?" I was convinced there had to be some normal reason for all of it. Sounds echo strangely in old houses. People forget things. People misplace things. We all become idiots when we are tired or stressed. That was my theory. And I held on to it because the alternative was absurd. Then Dan woke up in the middle of the night and saw a figure watching him sleep. He said it was standing in the doorway of his room, just a shape at first, black against the pale hallway light. When he sat up, the thing moved away from the door and down the hall. Dan grabbed a lamp and chased it through the house, calling out and opening doors and turning on lights, but there was no one there. By the time he reached the back of the house, the hallway was empty. He tore the place apart, looking for an intruder. Closets, under beds, inside the bathroom. Behind the curtains, nothing. The next morning, he was pale and furious and shaking in a way I had never seen from him before. He was no longer joking. He was no longer half in doubt. Dan believed. Not long after that, Lisa said she saw an eye in the crack of her bedroom door. She swore it was there just for a second. She had been waking up and looking out at the hallway when she saw it, a single eye watching her through the narrow line between the door and the frame. She said it looked human, but wrong somehow, like the shape of it had been squeezed into the opening. She said it was there one moment and gone the next. Lisa was not the kind of person to scare easily, so when she told us that, I believed her before I wanted to. And then Beth moved out. She did not make a huge scene about it. That almost made it worse. One day she was there, helping with dishes and complaining about the heat, and the next she said she was leaving. She would not even tell us why at first. She packed her things in silence and kept her eyes down. We asked what happened. We asked if someone had frightened her. We asked if she had found another place closer to work. She only said she was done with the house. That was when the four of us became three. And even after Beth left, the haunting did not stop. If anything, it got worse. It was all completely unscientific. And I knew that. I knew how ridiculous it sounded. I had spent years telling students to trust evidence, to look for patterns, to avoid jumping to conclusions. I taught science for a living. I believed in logic, testing, observation, repeatability. That was my world. That was the world I understood. At work, I kept all of that together. I was calm, rational, normal. At home, I started doing weird little things without meaning to. I began announcing myself before entering rooms, just in case something was there and did not want to be surprised. I would stand outside a bedroom door and say, "It's me," before going in. I would wriggle each doorknob 4 times before opening it, as if that could somehow make sure the lock was the only thing between us and whatever lived in the house. I do not know where I got the idea from. It felt like something my body knew before my mind admitted it. Dan went to church. That was his answer. He started with one Sunday, then another. Then he was going twice a week and talking about peace and evil, and how some places needed prayer. Lisa became a witch, at least in the loose way people use that word when they stop pretending they are joking. She burned herbs and left bowls of salt by the windows and talked about cleansing the energy in the rooms. I kept teaching science, explaining photosynthesis and electricity to teenagers, while slowly losing whatever confidence I had in the world once I got home. Then Jack moved in to replace Beth. He thought we were all insane from the beginning. He said so in his own way, with eye rolls and little laughs and the kind of smile people wear when they think they are the only sane one in a room full of fools. He did not hear anything the first few days. He did not see anything. He called the whole thing ridiculous. He moved out less than a month later. He said we were too loud. That was the funny part, if it can be called funny. We had all become so afraid of drawing attention that we were careful to be quiet. We whispered in the halls. We closed doors gently. We stopped playing music. We stopped laughing too hard. We moved like people, trying not to wake a baby. Except there was no baby. And still we acted like the house might get angry if we made too much noise. By then the house had changed all of us. And then came the attic. Truth be told, we had no idea there was an attic. The house looked too small for one. Or maybe we had simply never paid attention. But one night I came home and found myself alone. I did not know where Dan and Lisa had gone off to. I was tired, and the place was quiet in that wrong, suspended way it got after dark. I was walking through the upstairs hall when I noticed a ladder coming down from the ceiling. I stopped. For a second, I just stared at it, almost in awe. I had never seen it before. The hatch was open, and the ladder hung down into the hall like it had always been there, waiting. I remember thinking that maybe I had somehow missed it every other time I'd walked through the house, which felt impossible. Then I climbed it. The attic was dusty and hot and full of old things that made no sense together. There were dolls scattered across the floor, some with cracked faces and some missing hair, their glass eyes staring blankly into the dim light. There were what I first thought were old theater costumes, frilly dresses in faded colors, wigs, hats, and bits of cloth draped over boxes and furniture like dead skin. It looked like the storage space for something strange and forgotten. I flipped on the light, but it was weak and yellow and did not reach very far. I stood there for a moment, turning slowly, feeling like I was missing something. I did what anyone would do. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. Then I shined it into the darkest corner. There, squatting in the shadows, was a man. Just some fucking guy. Not a ghost. Not a monster. Not a thing from beyond the grave. Just a man crouched in the corner of the attic, staring back at me. I do not remember making a sound at first. I do remember dropping the flashlight, which bounced off the floor and spun away. I remember my knee hitting the ladder. I remember falling down it badly enough that the pain did not really register until I was already on the stairs. Then I tumbled the rest of the way, hit the floor, scrambled to my feet, nearly tore the front door off its frame trying to get out, and ran into the street like the whole house was on fire. Of course I called the cops. Of course they came. And they went into the house. That part still makes my skin crawl. The thing that bothers me most even now is not that there was a man in the attic. It is what happened when the cops came back out. They walked onto the street, back into the neat line of identical homes, and they had him. They had the guy. I never got a good look at him. My memory of his face is still a blur of dirty hair, two wide eyes, and the shock of understanding that I had spent months thinking we were haunted when there had been a living person hiding over our heads. But the police had him by the arms, and he looked weak and scared and very real. I remember asking what he was doing there. I remember someone saying he had been living in the attic. I remember hearing that and feeling sick, because suddenly everything changed shape. The screaming, the moving objects, the eye in the crack of the door, the strange noises in the night. Some of it could have been him. Maybe all of it could have been him. Or maybe not. Maybe the house had been haunted too, and we had simply been unlucky enough to have both problems at once. I still do not know. That uncertainty is part of why I remember it so clearly. After that, the house never felt the same. I still announced my presence before entering rooms. I still wriggle each doorknob 4 times before opening it. Dan eventually became a priest, which seems about right for someone who once chased a shadow through a house and decided God was the only explanation left. Lisa moved to a remote tropical island and now sends the occasional postcard filled with half-mystical nonsense about moon water and salt air. I have not heard from Beth in years. As for Jack, he left and never came back. He was so certain at first that we were all overreacting. Then he was gone. We all changed in ways we did not plan for. I still teach science. I still talk about facts and experiments and evidence. I still tell students that there is usually a rational answer if you look hard enough. I still believe that most of the time. But every now and then when a hallway is too quiet or a door is left slightly open, I remember the screaming on the first night. I remember the attic ladder. I remember the man in the corner. I remember how certain we were that something unseen was living in the house with us. And in the end, we were right about one part of it. Anyway, they arrested the guy. Story 4. My brother Jim and I worked at a tourist rail bike place in Sweden a few years ago, and I still do not know how to explain what happened out there. I am not using our real names, and I am not naming the location either. That is not me being dramatic. It is just better that way. Some places and some things feel like they should stay unnamed. If you have ever been in Sweden during the summer, you might know the kind of place I mean. There are these quiet little attractions where people ride metal rail bikes along old, abandoned train tracks. They are usually far out in the woods, away from towns and roads, surrounded by nothing but trees, grass, and silence. The kind of place that feels peaceful until something goes wrong. Jim and I had worked there for a couple of seasons already. By then, we knew the track well. We knew every curve, every open stretch, every spot where branches tended to fall. We knew the places where the trees leaned too close to the rails and the places where the forest opened up enough that you could actually see the sky. We thought we understood it completely. There were 3 stations along the route, one at each end and one in the middle where we worked. Our job was simple enough. We greeted visitors, explained the rules, helped them onto the rail bikes, and made sure they had a safe ride. But a big part of the job was maintenance, too. The forest never left the track alone. Branches fell across it. Bushes grew over it. Sometimes small trees got knocked down by wind or weather. Before opening, we often had to ride out and clear whatever was in the way. Our section ran about 5 kilometers north to a small wooden cabin near a damaged part of the rail. On a normal day, it took about an hour to get there and back, depending on how much clearing we had to do. The day this happened started like any other. We got to the station around 9 a.m. The attraction did not open until 10, and we had no bookings that morning. That was not unusual, but it meant we could take our time. We put up signs saying we were out on the track doing maintenance, just in case anyone showed up early. The weather was fine. The sky was bright. The forest looked normal. At least it did at first. We got on the rail bike and started heading north. Jim pedaled, and I sat behind him watching the trees pass by. The track was familiar enough that we barely had to think about where we were going. We made small talk at first, the usual stuff, nothing serious. Then I noticed something strange. The forest was too quiet. At first I thought I was just being dramatic. You do get used to a certain amount of noise in the woods. Birds, insects, the wind moving through the branches, little sounds under your own movement. But this was different. There was nothing. No birds, no insects, no rustling leaves, no wind brushing through the trees. The only sound was the rail bike clicking against the track. I remember looking around and feeling my skin start to crawl. The silence was so complete, it felt unnatural. Still, I did not say anything right away. I did not want to sound paranoid over nothing, but the farther we rode, the heavier that feeling got. About 2 kilometers in, I could not ignore it anymore. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Are you getting tired? I can take over if you want." Jim slowed down a little. "Yeah," he said. "This uphill is worse than I remember." So we switched places. I took over pedaling, and for a while that helped. We started talking more, just trying to fill the silence. We talked about games, about food, about random things that did not matter. It helped a little, but the forest itself still stayed dead quiet around us. No birds, no wind, no life. After a while, we got close to the end of our section. There was a clearing ahead where the forest opened up into fields on both sides of the track. It was one of the only places where you could see far in every direction. We always slowed down there anyway, since it was a good place to switch. That was when I saw it. "Jim, what the hell is that?" I pointed ahead. At first, my brain tried to make sense of what I was looking at. It looked like an animal standing in the tall grass near the edge of the clearing. But something about it was wrong immediately. It was too big. Much too big for a deer. Too big even for a moose. It stood on all fours, but its back was bent in a strange way, almost hunched too tightly, like its body did not bend correctly. Its color was hard to make out, somewhere between gray and a pale, dirty white, and it looked like it did not belong in the forest at all. Jim and I both froze. We did not speak. We just stared. The thing did not react to us at first. It stayed still in the grass, then slowly started moving its head along the ground like it was sniffing for something. That was when I got a better look at its face. I wish I had not. The best way I can describe it is like someone had smashed together a deer skull and a wolf skull, but badly, wrongly. Not as if they had been joined together by nature, but by something that did not understand what it was doing. It did not have eyes that I could see, just dark, empty sockets. The rest of its head looked rotten, like decaying flesh stuck to bone, or matted fur gone bad. It did not look alive in any normal sense. Then it made a sound, a loud cracking noise. It sounded like bones snapping, or thick branches being broken all at once. The sound bounced through the forest and hit me in the chest like a ooder. I felt it more than I heard it. Very slowly, it turned its head toward us. It had noticed us. It lowered its body even more, as if getting ready to run. That was when I finally spoke. Jim slowly turned the bike around. "I'll keep watching it." "But what if..." "Just do it." He did not argue again. Very carefully, he started turning the rail bike around on the track. Those few seconds felt endless. I kept my eyes on the creature, and it kept its head low, watching us with those empty sockets. Then it opened its jaw slightly. It looked almost like it was smiling, and then it moved. 1 second, it was there. The next, it dropped low into the grass and vanished. I did not wait to see if it would come back. I jumped onto the bike. Go! As fast as you can. Jim started pedaling hard. We shot back down the track as fast as the bike would go. The rail bikes can move much faster than people think, especially going downhill. We were probably going around 30 or 40 kilometers per hour, maybe more. The wind hit our faces, and the forest blurred around us. At first, I thought we might have gotten away. I looked back once. Nothing behind us, just the track and the trees. Then we heard it. To our right, in the forest, branches snapping, brush shaking. Something moving fast. It was keeping pace with us. I still remember how my stomach turned when I realized it was following us. We could not see it clearly, but we could hear it, always just off to the side, always matching our speed. It stayed with us for what felt like forever. Probably around 20 minutes, though it felt much longer. And then, all of a sudden, the sound stopped. Just like that. No branches, no shaking, no movement. Jim slowed down because he was exhausted, and both of us were breathing hard. I remember saying, "I think it's gone," but I was not sure if I believed it. We stopped for a moment and listened. That was when we heard the scream. It did not sound human. I do not even know how to describe it properly. It sounded like a man and a woman screaming at the same time, mixed with something animal, maybe a dog in pain. It was deep and high at the same time, like a scream and a laugh and a cry all twisted together into one terrible sound. It echoed through the forest, and my whole body went cold. After that, we did not stop again. We got back on the bike and kept pedaling as hard as we could. About 10 minutes later, everything changed. The forest came back to life. Birds started chirping again. Wind moved through the trees, leaves rustled, insects buzzed. All the normal sounds of the woods returned as if someone had flipped a switch. It was like the silence had never happened at all. When we got back to the station, it was empty. We did not do any more work that day. We did not tell our boss. We did not tell anyone at first. We were too shaken up. Eventually, we told a few family members. But even then, it was hard to explain what we had seen. A giant pale creature. The silence, the scream, the way it followed us and then vanished. After that summer, both Jim and I quit. Officially, the attraction shut down later anyway because of low visitor numbers and safety concerns. But even if it had stayed open, I would never have gone back. I still think about that day sometimes, about how wrong the forest felt, about the silence, about that thing standing in the grass and turning its empty face toward us. And if I ever find myself in a place like that again, where the woods suddenly go quiet and everything feels wrong without any clear reason, I will not ignore it. I will turn around, and I will leave before whatever is watching decides to follow. Story 5. I am writing this from my car in the company parking lot. I do not want to go back inside. I honestly do not know if I can keep going back inside. I need someone to tell me what is happening, because I am running out of normal explanations, and the explanations I have left are getting worse every time I think about them. I started this job 4 weeks ago. It is a mid-sized company. Nothing fancy. Just a plain office building with glass doors, gray walls, coffee that tastes burned, and people who always seem half busy and half tired. I was hired into the marketing department. The interview process was normal enough. 3 rounds, a few polite emails, a video call, then an in-person meeting. I got the offer on a Tuesday. I signed the paperwork on a Friday. My start date was the following Monday. I have all of it saved. The email chain, the offer letter, the payroll forms, my first paycheck. Everything is dated, stamped, and real within the last month. Or at least it should be real. On my first day, a woman from accounting came up to me at the coffee machine and hugged me like we were old co-workers. She smiled and said, "Welcome back. We missed you." I remember blinking at her and laughing a little because I thought she was just being warm to a new hire. I said, "Thank you. I'm glad to be here." She looked confused and then said, "What do you mean new? You've been here since I started." I told myself it was a mistake. People say strange things when they are busy. They mix people up. They remember the wrong face, the wrong name, the wrong date. I let it go. By the end of the first week, I had collected 6 more moments like that. A guy from IT asked how my dog was doing. I do not have a dog. I have never had a dog. A woman in HR asked me if I was bringing my husband to the company picnic. I am not married. I have never been married. The director of my department referenced a project I supposedly led in 2019, 4 years before I had even heard of this company. Every time it happened, I laughed it off, but inside I was starting to feel wrong in my own skin. Not scared at first, just off balance. Like the world had shifted an inch to the left and nobody else had noticed. So I started checking things. I logged into the company directory. There was a photo of me there. It was my face, clearly my face, but I had never seen the photo before. I was wearing a blue shirt I do not own. Under my name, the hire date said January 2017, not 2024. Almost 9 years ago. I stared at that screen until the words stopped making sense. Then I went to HR. The woman at the front desk pulled up my file. She showed me the paperwork I had signed last month. Then she scrolled down and showed me years and years of performance reviews, salary changes, training records, and benefit selections. All under my name, all with my signature. The signatures matched mine. That was the part that made my stomach turn. I know my own writing. I know the small curve in my name, the way my last letter trails off if I'm writing fast, the little tilt in the first letter when I'm tired. It was mine, exactly mine. But I have never signed any of those forms. I asked her if maybe there were 2 employees with the same name. She checked. There was only one. Me. She looked at me with this strange, concerned face and said, "Honey, did you hit your head or something?" I left before I said something stupid or cried in front of her. I went back to my desk, hoping that if I sat down and did my work, maybe I would calm down and everything would make sense again. But my desk had changed too. There were framed photos on it, 3 of them. They had not been there at the end of the previous week. I would swear on that. I had left my desk neat and empty, except for my notebook, my mug, and the office supplies I had just started using. Now there were 3 photo frames. One showed me at what looked like a company event from years ago, smiling with a drink in my hand. One showed me with 2 children I had never seen in my life. One showed me holding a small white dog on a beach I had never been to. I sat down very slowly. I picked up the photo with the children first. They looked about 6 and 9 maybe. A boy and a girl. The older one had my eyes. That was the first thing I noticed, and the first thing that made my chest go tight. The younger one had a wide smile, and the older girl had a serious face that made her look older than she should have been. There was something so familiar about them that it felt like a punch to the ribs. The older girl had a tiny chip in one of her front teeth. I have that same chip. I got it when I fell off a swing at age 7. I sat there holding the frame in both hands for a long time, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. My heart was beating too fast. I kept telling myself there had to be a simple answer. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe a coworker had done it. Maybe I was the victim of some deeply weird office prank. But the photos were too old for that, and too personal. That was last Tuesday. For the rest of the week, I tried to act normal. I kept my head down and did the work I was actually hired to do. I answered emails. I sat in meetings. I took notes. I smiled when people spoke to me, even though half of the time I had the strange feeling they were talking to someone else and just using my face. People kept mentioning things I had no memory of. A coworker asked me if I wanted to go out for lunch, like we used to. The receptionist asked how my mother was doing after her surgery. My mother is fine. She has not had surgery. I have not even spoken to her in 3 weeks, because we are in the middle of an argument. By Friday, the IT guy came by my desk and said, "Hey, your old laptop finally died. Want me to pull anything off it before I wipe it?" I looked at him and asked, "What old laptop?" He pointed to a machine on his cart with my name on a label. He said it had been my work laptop for years until last year, when I switched to the one I have now. I stared at it so hard that I thought my eyes might start hurting. He plugged it in and let it boot up. The desktop loaded. The wallpaper was a photo of me with the same 2 children from the framed picture. The folders on the desktop were arranged in a way I would arrange them. There were browser tabs open with websites I read regularly. There were old emails, notes, documents, searches, things I would actually look up, things I would actually click on late at night. I asked if I could take the laptop home for the weekend before he wiped it. He said sure. I do not think he understood how badly my hands were shaking when I picked it up. I spent the entire weekend going through it. There are 9 years of my life on that laptop. 9 years. Photos with the children. Photos with a man whose face I have never seen before. Tax forms, travel bookings, medical appointments, school emails about parent-teacher conferences, grocery lists, holiday cards, birthday reminders, work documents, family pictures from vacations I do not remember taking, birthday cakes, Halloween costumes, small stupid moments that should mean everything and yet mean nothing to me because I have no memory of living them. It is all there, detailed, specific, ordinary, mine in every way that matters except that I have never lived any of it. There is even a wedding folder. In the pictures, the man and I are standing in front of a garden arch. I am wearing a white dress. He is wearing a dark suit. We look happy, relaxed, real. He has a wedding ring. So do I. I do not have a wedding ring. I have never been married. I looked at my left hand for a long time. On the ring finger, there is a pale band, lighter than the skin around it, like something has been there for years and recently come off. I kept rubbing at it, thinking maybe it was a mark from something else, a watch, a bandage, anything. but it looks exactly like where a ring would sit. That Monday morning, I came back to work hoping the weekend had been some kind of strange mistake. But the building was the same. The people were the same. The desk was the same. The photos were still there. The receptionist looked up when I walked in and smiled. Then she said, "Is your daughter feeling better?" I stopped walking. "I'm sorry," I said. "What did you just say?" She looked surprised. "Your daughter, the little one? You said yesterday she had a fever?" I stared at her. I do not remember speaking to her yesterday. I do not have a daughter. I went straight to my desk and looked at the frame photo again. The younger child, the little girl, had dark hair and a soft face, and those same familiar eyes. The girl looked like she might be about 6, maybe younger. I kept staring at her because every time I looked, my chest hurt more. I do not know how to explain that feeling. It was not just fear. It was grief without a clear cause. It was like looking at someone I had lost, except I had no memory of ever loving her. I checked my phone again, hoping for something normal, something simple, something that proved my real life was still there. No strange contacts, no messages from my husband, no messages from children, no family photos. My personal email was the same one I had always used. No sign of a second life. Then I opened my work laptop. On the calendar, there was an appointment for tonight at 6 p.m. Pick up Maddie from dance. Maddie is the name of the older child in the photo. I did not put that in my calendar. My hands went cold. I sat back in the chair and just stared at the screen until the words stopped looking like words and started looking like a threat. That was when I came out to my car. I have been sitting here in the parking lot ever since, trying to make sense of the impossible. What scares me most is not just that there are fake memories everywhere. It is that nobody else seems to think they are fake. The receptionist truly believes I have a daughter. The IT guy truly believes I have worked here for years. HR truly believes I signed those records. The company directory truly believes I have been here since 2017. And nobody looks like they are lying. That is the worst part. They are not acting strange in the way people act when they are hiding something. They are acting like they know me, like they know a whole version of me that I have never met. They smile in the same friendly way they always have. But now I can see something under it. Not cruelty, not even confusion. More like concern for a person who is not remembering her own life. I keep thinking about the laptop on the passenger seat beside me. I know I should not keep looking at it, but I can't stop. Every time I open it, I find something worse. Birthday photos, school projects, doctor's notes, messages to and from people I have no memory of. A life so full that it almost feels more real than the one I am living now. Almost. There is a photo of the older child, Maddie, holding a violin case. The younger one is beside her, laughing. Behind them is a man in the kitchen. He has one arm around my waist. The date says last summer. I stared at that photo for a long time because the kitchen behind them looks exactly like the kind of kitchen I think I should remember. Warm light, yellow walls, a hanging plant, a magnet-covered fridge. I feel sick every time I look at it. I even called my mother. I needed to hear her voice. I needed someone who knew the actual me. The one before this office, before the children, before the ring mark, before all of this. She answered and sounded normal. I asked if she had any surgery. She said no. I asked if she knew where I had been living for the last several years. She laughed and said, "What kind of question is that?" I asked if I had ever been married. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Why are you asking me this?" I told her to answer the question. She said, "Of course you were married. What is wrong with you?" I could not speak for a second. Then I asked about the children. She said, "What children?" I felt something in me go hard and cold. Then she started sounding worried, asking if I was tired, if I had been drinking, if something had happened at work. I ended the call before she could say anything else. So now I am sitting here, trying to figure out if I have gone insane or if my life has been replaced. Those are the two answers that keep coming back to me. Either I am losing my mind, or someone has taken a clean, complete life and stitched it around me so perfectly that even the paperwork believes it. I do not know which is worse. I keep staring at the chipped tooth in the photo because I cannot stop. That little chip keeps pulling me in. It should mean nothing. It should be a random detail. But I know that chip. I know exactly how it feels to run my tongue across it. I know the day it happened. I know the pain, the embarrassment, the blood in my mouth, the swing set, the dirt under my shoes. So if that child has my chip, what does that mean? Is she mine? Have I been her mother this whole time and somehow forgot? Or am I looking at a stranger who was built to look like a child I once had? I do not even know if that makes sense. My brain keeps trying to protect itself by making this into something simple. A breakdown, a gas leak, a concussion, a prank, a long-term memory issue, a bad dream. Anything but the truth I keep circling. There is one thing I know for sure. Someone made this. Someone took the photos. Someone framed them. Someone put them on my desk. Someone arranged the laptop, the directory, the records, the calendar, the calls, the memories, all of it. That person knows what is happening here. That person knows who I am supposed to be, or who I was supposed to be. I need to find them before 6 p.m. because I cannot stop thinking about the child named Maddie waiting outside the dance studio for someone who is supposed to pick her up. And I do not know if that person is me. Story 6. My mother died a few days after giving birth to me. I never met her in person. The only time I ever saw her face was in the videos my father kept on his phone. Old clips he never really showed anyone unless he was alone. My older brother always hated me for it. He blamed me for her death, and I never fought him on it. A part of me believed it too. It felt like I had taken something from the family the moment I was born, like my life had cost them everything. I saw that pain in my father as well, or maybe I just wanted to see it because I already felt guilty. He was always quiet and distant. He carried a kind of loneliness around him that never really left. He never once blamed me out loud. But silence can say a lot more than words sometimes. There was one room in the house that no one ever entered. Not my father. Not my brother, not anyone. It was my mother's room. But I went in there sometimes when I was younger. I would sneak inside just to feel close to her, just to pretend for a little while that I knew what it felt like to have a mother who loved me. The room never changed. Everything stayed in place. Nothing moved. The air always carried a faint scent that felt like her, and for a while that was enough. But even that faded with time. I remember thinking I should stop going in there before that last trace of her disappeared completely. Eventually, I did. That was 12 years ago. When I turned 17, my father died. Not long after that, my brother left. Before he went, he told me I was the poison that killed both our parents. I wanted to tell him that I was his brother too, that I had not asked to be born into any of this, but the words never came out. Tonight, I got drunk and walked into her room again. I cursed myself for ever being born and collapsed onto her bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark. The thoughts came slowly at first, then heavier and heavier. Would my death mean something to my brother? Would it make him feel better? Or would it be the first time my life had ever meant anything at all? I lay there for longer than I should have. There was nowhere else to go. After a while, I got up and looked around the room. My mother's things were still neatly arranged in her cupboard, untouched, preserved like time had stopped for her alone. Her clothes hung exactly as they did in those old videos. I found my parents' wedding album, too, and every page inside showed a kind of happiness that made something twist in my chest. Looking at it made me feel like maybe I had never been meant to exist at all, like I was the crack in something that had once been whole. The curse this house never recovered from. I put the album aside and opened a small safe tucked behind her things. Inside were a few of her most cherished belongings, carefully stored like they had been protected for years. A faint trace of her perfume still clung to them. There was a folded hospital bracelet with her name on it, the ink faded with age. A small diary filled with neat handwriting, lists, reminders, and thoughts that ended too soon. A hairbrush with a few strands still caught in it. A dried flower pressed between two pages, fragile but somehow still there. Under all that lay a photograph. It showed my parents and my brother on the day he was born. It was taken in a hospital room. My mother looked weak and exhausted, but her smile was radiant. It was the kind of smile that made you feel like she was holding the whole world in her arms. My father stood beside her, smiling too, not just for her and not just for my brother, but for himself. It was a kind of happiness I had never seen in him after she died. Next to the photograph was her wedding ring, resting in its small box. Simple, small, beautiful. There were more things beneath it. A pair of tiny knitted socks, never used. A sealed envelope with my father's name written on it, never opened. A second hospital tag, even smaller than the first. No name on it, just a date. And under all of that, her phone. My hands were shaking when I picked up the envelope with my father's name on it. I opened it and began to read. The letter said, "I wish I could be there for our son's life. I want to see him smile, watch his first steps, see him grow into a man, fall in love, have a family of his own. I wanted to hear him call me Mom. I wanted to hear his voice. But fate is not kind. There is a cruelty in this world that hides behind promises. I love you, Victor. And I love both of our boys. I wish we had not made the mistake we did. We wished for our son to be born alive and well. We wished for the family we dreamed of. But I did not understand then that the wish we chased was fractured. Wrong in a way we could never take back. Our fractured wish might make his life miserable, but he deserves to know the truth. Please tell him or show him what I left him. He will understand. After all, he is our boy. Tell Ivan I'm sorry for leaving so soon. Tell him to be kind, to be a good big brother to Felix. Do not blame him. I am truly sorry. Take care of them from what is to come. Love, Elena. When I finished reading, my hands did not feel like mine anymore. I just stood there staring at the letter, confused and unable to make sense of half of it. But one thing felt certain, heavy, and impossible to ignore. My mother had died so I could live. I really was the cause of all this. Do not blame him. Those words kept repeating in my head over and over, like they belonged to someone else and had somehow gotten stuck inside me. I did not know who they were meant for. My father, my brother, me, and the part about the wish, the fractured wish. What had they done? What had they asked for? My hands were still shaking when I picked up her phone and turned it on. The screen lit up slowly, like it had been waiting for me. I started scrolling through it, hoping, needing to find something else. Something that could explain what she meant. The phone was almost empty. There was only one video. It was titled Felix. I stared at it for a long time before I could bring myself to press play. Then I took a breath, closed my eyes for a second, and opened them again. The video began in silence. For a few moments, there was nothing but darkness, like the camera was still being adjusted. Then I heard a faint rustle of fabric, breathing, and then I saw my mother, alive. She was sitting upright in a hospital bed. Her skin looked pale, and she was drenched in sweat. Her hair clung to her face. Her eyes were sunken, but open. Too open, alert in a way that did not belong to someone who had just given birth. She looked like she had been awake for days. She stared directly into the camera. "Victor," she said, "I do not know if you will watch this, or Ivan, or if you will let Felix watch it. Felix, you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to live without carrying guilt that was never yours." I froze. "This is your second birth, Felix," she said. "You were our first child, but you were born dead. We were devastated." She paused and looked down for a second, like the memory still hurt too much to say clearly. "It took us 10 years to have you. Doctors said it was impossible. We turned to God. Nothing happened. Then one day, it just did. We thought waiting had been worth it. We thought God had heard us and answered." She drew in a shaky breath. "Those 9 months were not easy, but we were happy. We knew our son was coming. We were excited to show you how beautiful life can be. We had so much love to give you that we kept thinking about the day you would be born." Her voice cracked a little. "And then you were born dead. I held your cold body in my arms. 9 months, and we lost everything." I sat there with the phone in my hand, barely breathing. "Grief takes you to places you do not understand," she continued. "We prayed for your peace, for your soul to be free. But somewhere along the way, that prayer changed. I do not even remember when. It became a wish to have you back. Just once, to hold you warm again." She looked straight ahead with a haunted expression. "Victor cried in silence when he prayed. I cried in his arms. We forget that when we pray, something else is also listening. And sometimes that something answers. That is what happened to us. When that voice came, we answered with grief in our hearts, and it hurt us. I could feel my chest tightening. The next year, I got pregnant again," she said. "We thought our wish had been granted. We already knew your name, so we gave it to him. Ivan. He came into our lives like light. We believed everything was finally right again." Her face softened just a little at that part. And then, a week ago, 6 years after Ivan's birth, you were born. I frowned, trying to understand. We called it a blessing, she said, not a wish. Then her expression changed. But today I saw the mark on you, the exact same birthmark you had the first time. That is when we understood. She leaned a little closer to the camera, her voice lower now. You are a wish, Felix. My mouth went dry. But we do not know what Ivan is. The words landed like a weight. He is our son, your brother, but he was never a part of that wish. We did not understand it until the answers came to us without us asking. She sat back slowly, breathing carefully, as though her body was failing her, even while she tried to continue. I may look weak after giving birth to you, she said, but this is not because of you. This is something else. Her eyes held mine through the screen. Listen to me carefully, Felix. What I am about to tell you is very important. The room felt colder somehow. Our wish was not heard by God, and it was not a devil either. It was something else, something beyond us, something from a world that exists alongside ours, but without a physical form. Something that needed a body, something that needed enough energy, enough connection to cross over. I could not stop staring. I do not know what it is, she said. Victor had a theory. He called it cross-possession. A world like ours, but displaced, out of reach. He believed there were souls there, wandering and searching for bodies, waiting for a moment strong enough to connect. And grief is strong, strong enough to be heard. That connection took time, years. She swallowed hard. And now it is here. Her eyes shifted slightly, and for a second I thought she was looking at something behind the camera. Then she looked back. I do not know if it is you, Felix, or Ivan. I do not even know if it is either of you. I cannot be certain. And that is what scares me the most. But you need to be careful. Both of you are human. Both of you are my sons. But if Victor is right, then there is something else, something dormant, living inside one of you, waiting. I felt my stomach twist. We took precautions. Victor must have placed a talisman in our house. As long as you do not stay away from the house for too long, the integration will never complete. She looked sad when she said the next part. Ivan, darling, you became our light. You brought life back into this house when we thought we had lost everything. If you ever start to feel different, if your thoughts do not feel like your own, if you hear something calling you from far away, do not answer it. Do not follow it. It will not be guiding you back. It will be learning how to replace you. Her face tightened with fear. And Felix, if you are the one it chose, if you ever feel like you have lived moments before they happen, or seen things that do not belong to this world, you must tell someone. You must not keep it inside. She took a breath and kept going. There is one more thing Victor noticed. Something we did not understand at first. The talisman does not just protect you from integration. It holds time itself in place. That talisman does not belong in our world, and I do not know where Victor got it from. He only told me it came from a sage, someone he called Serovilan. I had no idea what that meant, but I was too afraid to interrupt the video. So if either of you ever feels at home outside this house, if the world beyond these walls starts to feel more familiar than the place you grew up in, that means it has already begun. Please, stay together. Watch each other. Do not let either of you drift too far." She looked straight into the camera one last time. "I love you both." Then the video ended. I sat there for a long time without moving. The room felt too quiet, too still. My eyes burned from holding back tears, and when I finally rubbed them, I realized I had already started crying. I wished I had met her. Just once. I wished I could hear her voice without a screen between us. Could feel her arms around me, warm and real. I wondered what that would have felt like. Would it have been enough to stop the guilt? Would it have changed the way I thought about myself? Or would I still feel like I was the reason everyone had suffered? All I had were fragments now. A voice on a recording, a room that never changed, a life that never quite felt like it belonged to me. I leaned back against the bed and stared into nothing, letting her words play over and over in my head. The wish, the voice, the talisman, one of us, the thing that had been waiting. For the first time since I came into the room, I did not feel alone. That was when I heard footsteps. I looked toward the door. Even was standing there with his backpack on. He looked at me and gave a small smile that felt wrong somehow, as if it did not belong fully to him. "Sorry, Felix," he said. "I should have understood you better. I will be kind to you, like a good big brother." His smile stretched a little wider. "We will be a happy family," he said, "just like Mom wanted." And the worst part was that I could not tell anymore if the thing standing there was my brother or something that had already started learning how to wear him. Story 7. I was 20 when it happened. I was not a kid anymore, but I was not old enough to feel like I understood life either. I was still in college, still trying to keep my grades from falling apart, but honestly, school was never the thing I cared most about. The part of my day that mattered came after classes, when I got out of my school clothes and into work clothes that I did not mind getting covered in grease. I worked at a small auto shop, nothing fancy. No polished floors, no big signs, no clean waiting room with shiny coffee machines. Just old lifts, rusted tools, cracked floors, and cars that came in looking like they had lived 10 hard lives before reaching us. It was the kind of place where you learned by doing, by listening, by smell, by touch, by trying something, failing, and trying again. People at the shop called me a helper, but I knew better than that. I knew what I could do. I knew how to hear a problem in an engine before the hood was even open. A bad misfire, worn bearings, a slipping transmission, strange knock sounds, bad fuel mix, weak spark plugs. The car would tell me if I knew how to listen. At night, though, I wanted something else. That was when I felt alive. A lot of people think street racing is just about being fast, but that is not really what it is. Not for the people who actually care about it. It is about control. It is about the road, the engine, the timing. The split second when your foot presses down and your whole body locks into the rhythm of the car. For a while, nothing else matters. No school, no work, no bills, no future. Just you, the road, the sound, and the pressure in your chest. That is why I went that night. That is also why I ignored the feeling in my gut telling me not to. It started like any other night. We were supposed to meet near the highway, at a place everyone knew. It was wide, familiar, and easy enough to leave if cops showed up. We had done runs there before, nothing unusual. But one of the guys suggested a different place. "There's a mountain road," he said. "No traffic, no cops, pure corners. Way better. I remember laughing at first because it sounded insane. Mountain roads at night were not a safe idea. They were the kind of roads that could go wrong in 10 different ways before you even noticed the first problem. I said as much. But then another guy backed him up. Then another. And before long, the rest of us were already moving. That is the part that still bothers me when I think back on it. Not what happened later, just how easy it was to say yes. The drive-up started normally enough. We left the city lights behind, and one by one the street lamps disappeared until there was only darkness around us. Real darkness. Not the city kind where light leaks in from everywhere. This was the kind of dark that feels deep, like it has weight, like light does not belong there. The road got narrower the farther up we went. The air got colder, too. Trees closed in around the sides of the road, and the mountains seemed to swallow the headlights more than they should have. I had music playing in the car, but even that started to feel strange after a while. Not wrong exactly, just distant. Like the sound was being eaten before it reached me. I was following one of the other cars, watching the glow of its taillights move through the turns. At first I was focused on the road and on the engine, listening to the car respond under me. Then I noticed something was off. The forest was silent. Not just quiet, silent. No insects, no birds, no wind in the trees, nothing. The only sounds were our engines and tires. And even those sounded strange, like they were not traveling properly through the air. They felt thin, swallowed. I looked out toward the woods and felt a cold pull in my stomach. At first, I did not say anything. I thought maybe I was just being dramatic. Maybe the mountain was naturally quiet at night. But as we kept driving, that feeling grew heavier. The silence started pressing in on me, almost like the road itself was holding its breath. Eventually, we reached a clearing. It was a spot where the road opened a little wider, and the trees pulled back enough to make a natural place to stop. Gravel crunched under the tires as we parked. It looked abandoned, forgotten. Not in the haunted movie sense, but in the sad, old, unused sense. Like once long ago, something important had stood there, and now the place just existed because no one had bothered to erase it. I stepped out of the car. That is when I felt it. The pressure. It is hard to explain. It was the same feeling you get when you walk into a room where something bad just happened. Even if nobody tells you what it was. Your body knows before your brain does. Your muscles tighten. Your stomach drops. Your skin starts to crawl. This was worse. This felt like the whole clearing was aware of us. Someone nearby said, "Perfect spot." But their voice did not sound right. Too loud, too flat, too normal for a place like that. I looked around and noticed the poles. They were all over the clearing, standing at odd angles in the ground and at the edges near the trees. At first they looked like old wooden posts, maybe broken pieces of fencing, maybe old support beams from some forgotten structure. They were tall and thin, and in the dark they blended into the forest well enough that my brain accepted them without much thought. Then I looked again. They were too straight, too still. The surface of them had a strange look to it, not like bark, not like wood. It looked dry, cracked, almost like old skin that had been stretched too thin and left out too long. The longer I stared, the less I liked what I was seeing. I walked closer to one of them, mostly because curiosity made me stupid. I should not have. The texture was wrong. Not wood, not bark, not anything natural. It looked rough in a way that reminded me of dried flesh, the kind of thing your mind tries very hard to reject the moment it notices it. I told myself I was imagining it. Then it moved, just a little, a small shift, like something adjusting its balance. I froze. At first I tried to tell myself I was seeing things, that my eyes were tired, that the darkness was making my brain turn shapes into people. But then I noticed something else. The trees were not moving. There was no wind. Nothing else shifted. Only that thing. I took a slow step backward. "Did you see that?" I asked. No one answered. That made it worse. Then another pole moved. Not a lot. Just enough. And then I understood. They were not poles. They were standing still. The realization did not hit all at once. It came in pieces, which was somehow worse. My mind kept trying to explain it away. It is just wood. It is just the wind. It is a trick of the dark. It is your eyes. But those explanations stopped working fast. The thing closest to me bent, not like wood snapping or something being broken, like a joint moving, like a neck that had not moved in a very long time, finally deciding to turn, slowly, carefully. And it turned its head toward me. I could not make out the face clearly, but I saw enough to understand that I did not want to see any more. There was a shape where a face should have been, but it was wrong. Indented areas where eyes might have been. A thin line that might have been a mouth, or maybe just the place where a mouth had once been. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. Then it made a sound, a loud cracking noise, like branches breaking all at once. The sound hit me so hard I felt it in my chest. It knew we were there. I do not know if the others saw it the same way I did. I only know that none of us moved. Nobody spoke. It felt like if one of us breathed too loudly, something terrible would happen. Then one of the guys dropped his keys. That tiny sound changed everything. The whole clearing seemed to wake up. All of them moved, not fast at first, not in some dramatic burst, just all at once like a signal had been given. That was the moment I knew the worst part. They were not random. They were aware. I did not remember making the decision to run. 1 second I was there, staring at the clearing. And the next I was in my car, hands shaking so badly I could hardly turn the key. For a second the engine did not catch. I remember that second more clearly than anything else. That awful short moment where I was trapped and could feel something outside my window. I felt it, not saw it. Felt it standing right there. Then the engine started. I hit the gas so hard the tires threw gravel behind me. I did not wait to see if the others were following. I did not check mirrors. I just got the car moving and kept going. The road down the mountain felt different than it had on the way up. I know that sounds stupid. Roads do not change. But that one did, or at least it felt like it did. It seemed longer. Every turn stretched too far. Every straightaway felt endless. The dark around the road seemed thicker now, heavier. Like the forest was leaning in to watch us leave. I kept one hand on the wheel and one on the gear, trying to keep the car steady through the turns. My heart was hammering so hard, I could barely think. Then I looked in the side mirror. I wish I had not. Something was there, running. Not on 2 legs the way a person would. Not on 4 the way an animal should. Its limbs moved wrong. too long, bending and straightening in a way that made no sense. It covered too much ground with each movement, like the body was not bound by the same rules as everything else. And its head was tilted just enough to make the whole thing feel even worse. It was looking at me, not chasing me like prey chases prey. Looking at me like it wanted to understand what I was. That scared me more than if it had lunged. I pressed the gas harder. The engine complained, but I did not care. If something broke, then something broke. I only needed distance. The thing kept up. Not always clearly, but enough. Every time I glanced to the side or into the mirror, I got the feeling it was still there. Sometimes I saw movement in the trees. Sometimes I heard something hit branches just off the road. Sometimes I thought it had disappeared, only to catch another glimpse farther back. It felt like it was not trying to catch us. It was following us, watching, learning. After a while, I stopped looking. Or maybe it stopped showing itself. I am not sure which is worse. We made it back. All of us did. Somehow. Nobody spoke on the drive home. Nobody wanted to say what had happened. We all acted like if we kept quiet, maybe the whole thing would stay where it belonged, up on that road in the dark. But it did not feel contained. It felt like something that had crossed over with us, even if we could not prove it. We did not talk about that night for a long time. Not the next day. Not the day after that. Not ever, really. The only thing I could think about was the silence. How the forest had gone completely quiet before we saw them. Yeah, how the sounds came back afterward. How the thing moved like it had been waiting for us to notice it. I stopped racing for a while after that. Not because I stopped loving cars or because I suddenly became responsible. It was because after that night, I started noticing things on roads that I had never paid attention to before. Poles, street posts, thin shadows at the edge of headlights, things standing too still. Sometimes I still see them now, and every time I do, I get that same pressure in my chest, that same terrible feeling that something is there, even if I cannot prove it, even if I cannot explain it. I do not race on mountain roads anymore. I do not stop in places that feel wrong. And if I ever see a pole in the dark that looks a little too straight, a little too still, I do not look long enough to find out what is really standing there. Story 8. My husband died one day before our 5th anniversary. It still feels wrong to say it out loud. One day he was here, joking with me over breakfast, thinking about what we might do for our anniversary. And the next day he was gone. He was at work when it happened. He said his chest hurt. And before anyone could really react, before anyone could get him help, he dropped dead at only 32 years old. He had an appointment with a cardiologist the following week. He never made it there. And I, at 31, became a widow. All of the plans we had made for the future disappeared in an instant. We had talked about everything. A bigger house. Maybe kids one day. More travel when work slowed down. Growing old together and complaining about our knees and our backs and the weather. All of it was gone before I even had time to understand what had happened. He was my best friend. He had been in my life for 20 years. Losing him felt less like losing a husband and more like having part of myself ripped out. But the world did not stop because I was grieving. Bills still arrived. Messages still came in. People still had to go to work. Dogs still needed to be fed. The kitchen still needed cleaning. Life did not care that I wanted to sit in one place and do nothing but cry. I gave some of his things back to his family, his clothes, a few books, some old tools he had borrowed from his brother and never returned. But I kept almost everything else. I kept his favorite mug. I kept the hoodie he always wore when he was cold. I kept the little notes he had written to me over the years. I even kept a gift I had bought for our anniversary, even though I would never be able to give it to him. I know that sounds silly. I know it probably is silly. But after he died, part of me believed that if I kept enough of his things close by, if I surrounded myself with the evidence that he had existed, maybe I would not lose him completely. Maybe he would still feel near me somehow. For a while, I lived like I was stuck in time. My days became very small. Wake up, go to work, come home, feed the pets, pretend to watch television, go to bed, repeat. I did not really feel present in my own life anymore. I was just moving through it. People were kind at first, but grief has a way of making people uncomfortable after a while. At the beginning, they pitied me. Later, they just seemed tired of hearing me sound sad all the time. At home, it was just me, our pets, and the silence. Well, not always silence. We had a son, Conyer, named Tukey. He was bright, loud, stubborn, and full of personality. He had been Devon's bird first, and then mine too. Devon had taught him to say a few things that were not exactly polite. Tukey liked to repeat bad words at the worst possible times, usually when someone came to the door or when the house was especially quiet. One evening, I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch a movie I had no memory of choosing, when Tukey suddenly shouted, "Fucking Devon!" I froze. I looked at him and blinked. "What did you just say, Tukey?" He stared back at me with his little dark eyes, puffed up a little, and then went back to sitting in his cage like nothing had happened. He had not said Devon's name since Devon died. Not once. So hearing it then, and hearing it in that angry little voice, made my skin prickle. I asked him again and again to repeat it, but he would not. He just climbed around in his cage and made bird sounds and acted like the whole thing had never happened. I told myself I had imagined it, or that he had said something similar, and I had filled in the rest because I missed my husband so much. That is what grief does. It makes you hear things, see things, believe things that may not be there. Nothing else happened for a few days. I went through the motions. I answered texts. I took care of the house. I tried not to think too hard about the 1-year anniversary that was coming up. It would have been our 6th anniversary, too, if he had lived. The date was sitting there in front of me like a wall I had to walk into. A few friends offered to take me out, but I said no. My mother wanted to come stay with me so I would not be alone. But I lied and told her friends would be with me. She probably knew I was lying. Mothers usually do. Still, she did not press me. I took both days off work. I told myself I would let myself grieve properly. I sat with his ashes, held the urn against my chest, and cried until my body hurt. I ordered his favorite hamburger from the place he always liked, made sure they left off the pickles, and put on an old Godzilla movie because he used to love watching monster movies with me. At some point, I fell asleep on the couch. I do not remember what I dreamed about, only the feeling. A deep emptiness. Like something had been pulled out of me and left a hollow space behind. Then Tukey screamed, "Fucking Devon!" I woke up so fast I nearly fell off the couch. The television was still on. The room was dark except for the blue light of the screen. Tuki's cage was covered, but not quite right. I looked at the clock and saw it was 12:01 in the morning. "Happy anniversary, Devin," I whispered toward the urn. I felt ridiculous saying it, but also broken. I covered Tuki's cage properly and stood up to turn off the television. That was when I saw it. On the shelf next to Devin's urn was a small wrapped gift and a note. I stared at it for a long time, too stunned to move. The box had been wrapped in bright lime green paper. The note on top had my name written on it. "Happy anniversary, Kiara." There was even a small drawing of a bird on the side. For a second, I did not know what to feel. I knew I should have been scared, or angry, or worried enough to call someone. But the first thing I felt was something else entirely. I felt happy. That feeling came before common sense. It came before fear. It came before I could ask who had been in my house. It was just there, sudden and warm, like some tiny piece of Devon had reached back toward me. Still, I was not a complete idiot, I think. I went to check the outside cameras. If someone had come to the house, the cameras would show it. I searched through the recordings and watched the entrance, the driveway, the walkway. No one appeared. No one came to the door. No car stopped. Nothing. That should have made the whole thing more frightening, but instead, I found myself telling another lie to myself. Maybe my mother had brought something and forgotten to mention it. Maybe someone else had access to the house. Maybe I had been more tired than I realized and was forgetting things. But no one had come over for months, and the only other person with keys was my mother. I went back to the gift. Tuki was making soft noises in his cage, so I let him out and set him on my shoulder. I wanted him with me, partly because he comforted me and partly because I wanted him to see what was inside. I did not know why that mattered, but it did. I opened the box. Inside was a paintbrush. Not just any paintbrush. I recognized it immediately. I had seen that exact brush at an art market a while ago and had wanted it badly. But the price had been too much. It was beautiful, with a little decorative handle and tiny gem-like details. I had looked at it for a long time and then walked away, telling myself I did not need it. No one should have known I wanted that brush. I had not even told Devin about it in any serious way. It was the kind of thing I had only mentioned once, half-jokingly, while we were walking through the market. But somehow it was here, in my house, in lime green wrapping paper, with my name on the note. I should have thought more carefully. I should have been frightened by how personal it was. But all I felt in that moment was a strange, aching joy. It had been so long since I had felt anything close to happy that I let myself hold on to it. If Devin had somehow left this for me, then maybe he had not gone as far away as I thought. So I did what felt right. I got out my art supplies. I set up my canvas. I let Tuki sit with me for a while, perched on my shoulder and moving his little claws against my shirt. I started to paint. It had been a year since I had really painted anything. But my hands seemed to remember. They moved slowly at first, then with more certainty. The brush was not as good as I had hoped, and it left some strange streaks on the canvas, but I kept going. I did not care. For the first time in a long while, I was not numb. Tuki eventually climbed back into his cage and slept. I stayed up all night painting with a kind of quiet focus I had forgotten I still had. By the time the sun came up, my hand was sore and my body felt heavy. But the weight I had been carrying inside me seemed just a little lighter. I hung the canvas above our bed, exactly where I had once promised Devon I would put a painting someday. I had never gotten around to it before. That morning, I cried again, but it was different. It was not the same empty kind of crying. It felt like something in me had opened a little. The sadness did not disappear. It never disappears that quickly, but after that, there was a small spark of hope again. I started talking to my friends more. I started painting again. I still missed Devon terribly, but I was no longer sitting still inside the same pain all day long. My family came over on my birthday, even though I had told them not to. I pretended to complain, but I will be honest, I was glad they came. We ate, talked, laughed, and filled the house with noise for a few hours. For a while, it felt like a normal life again. By nightfall, they had gone home and the house went quiet. I was cleaning up when I heard Tukey starting to panic in his cage. "Fucking Devon, fucking Devon, fucking Devon." He was screaming it over and over now, loud and frantic. I ran over right away. "What's wrong, Tukey?" I opened the cage and he rushed to my hand, feathers tight against his body. He climbed up toward my shoulder and hid in my hair, still making little alarmed sounds. I could feel his tiny heart beating fast. I looked around the room, but nothing seemed different at first. Then I saw it. Another wrapped gift had been placed beside Devon's urn. This time I did not feel excited. This time my stomach dropped. I stood there for a long moment trying to make sense of it. Maybe my parents had dropped something off earlier. Maybe I had missed it. But then I saw the tag. It had my name on it. The handwriting looked so much like Devon's that my knees went weak. I knew someone could copy handwriting if they really wanted to. But who would go to so much trouble? Who would take the time to make it look exactly like his? I reached for the box very slowly. Part of me wanted to leave it there. Part of me wanted to call someone and have them come take it away. But curiosity is a stubborn thing, and it has always been stronger in me than caution. Devon knew that about me. If he had been alive, he would have teased me for it. So I opened the present. Inside was a blanket, a bright yellow blanket. I had wanted one like that for the longest time. Something soft and warm and cheerful. I had mentioned it more than once while browsing online. But I never bought it myself because I always felt guilty spending money on something I did not need. I unfolded it carefully. Near one end, there was a small hole in the fabric. I did not think much of that at first. I was too wrapped up in how soft it felt and how much I liked the color. I took it to bed with me that night and slept better than I had in a long time. But after that, things changed. Not all at once. Not in a way I could point to right away. But little by little, the gifts kept coming. And the gifts were never quite right. Tukey began waking up at random times during the night, screaming for Devon or at Devon, or just screaming his name in terror. At first, I thought it was strange but exciting. I still believed the gifts meant something good. I thought maybe Devon was trying to reach me somehow. Maybe grief had opened a door I did not understand. The next gift was a hair stick. It was beautiful. but the end was slightly too sharp, almost like a pin. Then came a raccoon plushie with its eyes missing. I tried to ignore the strange parts. I told myself people made mistakes when they bought gifts. Maybe whoever was leaving them had poor taste. Maybe they did not know me as well as I thought. But deep down, I could feel something dark under all of it. Then one night I opened a box and almost threw up. The smell hit me first. It was rotten and thick and wrong. I held my breath while I unwrapped the lime green paper, my hands shaking now instead of excited. Inside was a sun conure, dead. Its body had started to rot, and that was where the smell came from. I stared at it in horror, my eyes filling with tears. I had once said, more than once, that I wanted another bird so Tuki would have company. I had meant it in a loving, normal way. But this was not that. This was cruel. It was sick. I gasped and stepped back. Then I picked up the box and threw it outside. That night, I could not sleep. I kept seeing the little dead bird in my mind. I kept thinking about the fact that someone had heard my wish and turned it into something ugly. I felt dirty just looking at the house. I started throwing out all the gifts I had received over the last few months. I took them out in bags and boxes and left them in the trash. Some of the neighbors yelled at me to be quieter because I was making too much noise, but I did not care. I was crying and angry and scared all at once. For a few weeks after that, nothing new arrived. I thought maybe I had broken whatever this was. Maybe the gifts had stopped because I had thrown them away. Maybe the whole thing had been some strange bad joke and it was over now. I started trying to live normally again. Then Tuki screamed. This time I did not answer right away. I stood very still and listened to him, feeling my stomach tighten with dread. I told myself not to react. I told myself if I ignored it, maybe whatever was happening would stop. But the screaming did not stop. So I went to him. There was a new box by the shelf. It was larger than the others. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely touch the note on top. When I finally did, I saw the words written there in shaky, familiar handwriting. Miss you. I ripped into the wrapping paper so fast I got several paper cuts across my fingers. I did not care. I needed to know what was inside. When I saw it, I screamed. Inside the box was Devon's severed head. It was arranged in a way that looked almost peaceful, except for the unnatural smile stretched across his face. His eyes were open. They were looking directly at me. I froze in place, unable to breathe. Then one of his eyes blinked. I nearly collapsed. His smile widened just a little more, too wide to be real, and I could not stand it any longer. The next moment, the head turned to ash right there in the box, as if it had never been flesh at all. I do not remember exactly what I did after that. I know I screamed again. I know I cried. I know I got rid of every single gift in the house after that, every last one. I started throwing away the things Devon had given me while he was alive too. His mugs, his old shirts, a few books. Some of his little presents that I had kept because they still smelled like him. I could not keep any of it anymore. By the time I reached the closet, I found the gift I had been supposed to give him on our 5th anniversary. I had never opened it. It had been sitting there all this time, wrapped in waiting. I took a deep breath and thought about what I could possibly do. I was still terrified, but I realized something important in that moment. All this time, I had been receiving gifts. I had not given anything back. So I wrapped up Devon's anniversary gift, placed it beside his urn, and wrote a note that said, "It's time to let go." I was not sure it would work. That night, I brought Tuki's cage into my room. I wanted to leave the house, but I was not sure if leaving would make anything better or worse. I did not sleep at all. I kept waiting for something to happen. But in the morning, the gift was gone. After that day, Tuki never called for Devon again. The gift stopped coming. Slowly, painfully, I started giving away or throwing out the things Devon had left behind. It hurt every single time. It still hurts. But it helped me move forward. I am not where I was before he died, and I will never be. I still miss him every day. I still love him. But I am no longer willing to put my whole life on hold for him. The only thing of his that I kept is Tuki. I could never get rid of my boy. The day that would have been our 7th anniversary is coming soon. I do not know what I will feel when it arrives. I only know that I am still here, and I am still trying. I just hope Tuki does not call out for Devon this time.